From Evil Seeds, a Turok novella by Fabian Nicieza. This story takes place after the death of Primar Gen and was released on the official Turok website from December 16, 1998 to April 1, 1999. Chapter 4: An Intimate Moment with Rhode Island. In the 18 months since Joshua Fireseed, occasional college baseball superstar and even less occasional college student at Oklahoma College in Oklahoma City, became Turok, the techno-magic Sequin protector of the gateways between Earth and an interdimensional sewer called the Lost Land, he had encountered an infinite number of amazing opponents and incredible allies. But until today, he had never been forced to fight Rhode Island. The Barakian sentient landmass stretched into the sky in front of him, casting a shadow behind him the length of the Empire State Building and the width of, well, a really overweight Empire State Building. Joshua felt a nasty pull in his neck from trying to see the top of the alien life form in front of him. The Barakian race was a collective hive made up of several enormous tubular worm-like aliens that melded together into one enormous mass. Each adult alien was approximately 200 feet long and 80 feet wide. This particular landmass, Josh estimated, math admittedly never being one of his better subjects, was made up of a whole truckload of Barakians. The situation had started innocently enough, or as innocently as any adventure in the Lost Land could. The council which governed the city-state of Forever Light, a group of diverse alien species who long ago had created a safe haven for any residents of the Lost Land who wished to live in a state of peace, had contacted him, needing the Turok's help. Galliana, the Lost Land, had remained dangerously unstable as a result of Joshua's recent battle against the omniversal annihilator called Primogen, the death of the near-eternal alien, and the subsequent loss of the diffused energy from his lightship that had been drawn across the Lost Land like electricity from a generator, had resulted in growing tectonic instability. Galliana, a fractured jigsaw puzzle of an environment to begin with, had suffered from an increase in earthquake activity that threatened to tear apart the fragile ecosystem. Several methods of finding alternate energy to feed the tectonic ley lines that spread across the fissures of the remnant world had failed. The latest attempt involved using the Barakians' specific and unique geoelectric synaptic activity to create a harmonic stability between their hive landmass and the ley line fissures. To that effect, Joshua and his best friend, Barry Hackowitz, had traveled inside a pregnant Barakian to attach a cybernetic stabilization probe onto a Barakian fetus. Mission sloppy, but accomplished. The baby was born, or erupted. And after having survived that experience, Josh and Barry encountered an unknown alien race at the foot of the collective hive, which made up the Barakian steppes. That alien race had taken the Forever Light survey team hostage, as well as taking a very vigorously violent stance against Josh and Barry. Turok sprung into action and fought back, and all that violent activity apparently and justifiably had upset the Barakian hive. For the first time in centuries, it rose from the ground it had attached itself to, and with a telepathic group voice said one word to Josh: "Die!" To which, in his best Wile E. Coyote refrain, Josh replied, "Eep." Except unlike the coyote, who usually fell off the cliff, this time the cliff was falling on Josh. Question: how do you avoid a mountain when it wants to step on you? Answer: you don't. With a speed born both from the leggings he wore, which were imbued with the spirit of the cougar, and of desperation, Joshua charged towards the base of the Barakian hive. Finding a crevice between what could arguably be called the creature's toes, Turok dove for cover. He wedged himself between the hard, rock-like consistency of the alien's skin and waited as the hive lifted its foot off the ground and stamped with a resounding tremor on the spot where Josh had been standing. Joshua continued to work his way inside the cavernous skin of the alien, using the natural terrain to further protect him from the Barakian's tantrum. He had no way of communicating with the creature, so short of fleeing through an interdimensional gateway which Josh could create with the folding eye lens on his headband, Turok figured that his best move would be to move uphill inside the creature, and find the hostage Forever Light survey team. He hoped they would all be alive. He hoped that they had been able to take refuge as he had when the alien collective had chosen to rise. The mysterious aliens who had precipitated this entire mess could have tumbled off the mountainside for all Josh cared, but the science team was made up of good people trying to do a good thing. Josh realized that his limited experience in rock climbing would come to bear more than the accoutrements of the Turok, so he stashed most of the weaponry he had slung over his shoulder back into the near-infinite and seemingly empty leather satchel at his side, called the Light Burden. So, slowly, handhold by handhold, he made his way up the canyon-like cliff face of the Barakian's body. An hour later, he had barely reached the equivalent of the creature's calf. He knew he probably could have found a fold-gate fissure somewhere along the expanse of the Barakian's body, although most of the invisible gateways tended to rest close to the ground. Worried that finding the doorway wouldn't be as difficult as coming out of it and not falling several hundred feet to the ground, Josh decided that the slow way was, for now, the best way. To an extent, the methodical pace and physical grind were also therapeutic, allowing Josh some time to download the situation. Why would the mysterious aliens oppose the Forever Light Council's plan to use the Barakians to restore stability to Galiana? Why would the Barakian get so flustered over the fusillade of firepower which peppered its hide, when, for a creature as immense and dense as the collective was, such activity amounted to nothing more than a strong rainfall? And the question which nagged him the most, had his friend and Galiana guide, the bioelectric being named Aiden, speaker of Forever Light, survived the alien assault? He had not seen her when they first confronted the antagonistic aliens. She might have downloaded herself into any number of mechanical devices the survey team brought with them. From there, she could have transmitted herself into any other similarly attuned electromagnetic device. Must save a fortune in long-distance phone bills, he mused. Josh hoped her bioelectric aura had not been disrupted. As an energy-based being, her form could not be totally destroyed, but it could be disrupted to the point where she would be incapable of recuperating herself. You know how to pick the ones to fall in love with, don't you, Josh? He thought. And in thinking that, he paused, as much to consider his feelings as for a rest. He had never admitted to himself, until that moment, that maybe he really had fallen in love with Aiden. But how could a human made of flesh and bone love a woman made of, well, electromagnetic wavelengths? Maybe he was growing up, he thought. Maybe he finally understood that love, real love, went beyond mere physicality. And besides, he thought, for a bioelectric being, she's put together pretty damn nicely. He continued to climb. His pace quickened, knowing that he had to make sure she was all right. Elsewhere, otherwhen, in the region between the interdimensional sewer, which was Galiana, and the real universe, was a space between space and time called the Netherscape. It was in this null void that Joshua had left his best friend Barry behind, ostensibly for his own protection, since Barry was ill-equipped to handle an all-out firefight. Leaving him behind, Josh hoped, would also provide Barry an opportunity to flex the muscle he did have which could help them, his brain. Okay then, I think I have it figured out, Barry muttered to himself as he floated slowly in the ether, as if suspended in a tank of black jello. Even though Scooby-Doo couldn't talk, there is no reason to deny the genetic potential of his family line, if mated properly, to spawn Scrappy-Doo, who could talk, albeit with an amazingly annoying nasal twang. And if one accepts the possibility of Scrappy, then one must also accept the potential existing within Scooby himself for independent thought and reasoning. He had been considering their real predicament from every conceivable angle, until the Scooby-Scrappy conundrum infringed on his active thought process. Barry's brain was like a runaway train. Occasionally it switched tracks, but it continued to barrel forward regardless of the track or destination. But even his legendary monolithic attention span could be justifiably distracted as a soft, hollow voice drifted out of his groin. When we have the time, I would like to learn more of this great creature called Scooby-Doo. Nervously, Barry dug into his front pocket, and pulled out the handheld scanner he had used earlier in the Barakian gestation cavern. He flipped open the scanner like a cell phone and spuriously said, "Adon, is that you? Hit the activation code for an A-band spectrum analysis," said the tinny small voice again. Barry did as she asked, and suddenly an electric flare arced around the scanner device, coalescing into the holographic form of Aiden, Speaker of Forever Light. Her features were soft and perpetually diffused, as if seen through the same filter used to shoot Sybil Shepherd on Moonlighting. She was tall, nearly 6 feet, with off-white skin, gunmetal grey leggings and top that exposed her bare mid-drift. She had ceremonial armor attachments on her shoulders and forearms, which allowed as much for a variety of scanning devices as it did for political regalia. She was beautiful, made more so, Barry thought, by her social awkwardness and insecurities. In some ways, she was a cold, unemotional person. In others, she was touchingly innocent and needy. It was understandable why Josh was falling for her, he figured. It was also difficult for Barry to shake the nagging feeling that in some ways, Aiden was attracted to him as well. Maybe it was his imagination, or his own projection, but he felt that Aiden had fallen in love with Josh's physicality and emotional gravity, but she was intrigued by Barry's intelligence and mental curiosity. Could it really be that together, Josh and Barry made the perfect man? In the background of his cluttered and often alarmingly strange mind, Barry could hear the thrum of a guitar, the echo of a wah-wah pedal, and the sultry, stiff voice of some bad late-night cable movie actress whispering, "So you're the new pool boy?" He gave himself a mental slap in the face and concentrated on the here and now. What are you doing here?" he asked. Aiden explained what had happened to the survey team while they were inside the Barakian. She also told him what she knew of the antagonistic aliens who had assaulted them. Upon their arrival, she had taken refuge in some of the activated scanning equipment and then downloaded herself into Barry's scanner, which had been linked to the survey team's systems. She told him that she knew the answer to their dilemma most likely resided in Barry's thinking and not in Joshua's hitting. It took her some time to access the open communications line through the firewall separating Galliana from the Netherscape. Barry smiled shyly at the compliment and then said, "Wait a minute, what you just said before about the aliens who attacked you, what did you call them, the hijacks? I think I know how to solve our problem." End of chapter. From Evil Seeds, a Turok novella by Fabian Nicieza.